Good afternoon. Hello. I am so excited today to have Janine Bolon here with me. Hello, hello. And so let me just give her a quick introduction, but nothing is going to be so great as this conversation that we're about to have. So the topic today is money. It's not just for rich people. I think this is a great topic, especially right now. A lot of people like our ages are thinking about retirement and they're thinking about what they want to do and are very interested in money. And then on the flip side, when you're younger, I send stuff to my nephew. He's like 16, and I want to get him excited and interested about making money. And, you listen to those podcasts like Bigger Pockets or something where, there's these 20 somethings that are like multimillionaires. So super excited about the topic. I can't wait to see what you have to share. But anyway, a little bit about you. I know you're from Colorado. I know that I met you in a space where there's a lot more podcasters. So you have 4 podcasts, right?
Right.
4 podcasts, about 12 books.
Yes, and a radio show that's on 3 different stations.
Amazing, amazing. So I'm sure that one of the questions is, how do you get it all done?
Yeah, I get that asked of me a lot. And one of the things I like to say is I'm really good at time management. Sometimes things fall through the cracks, but for the most part, we do stay on task. But you have to make the decisions very early on in your business on what is important to you, and you block out that time, and that's sacrosanct. And then you build your business around that life. So that's what I like to help my business owners out with when I'm coaching them. It's like, okay, what's your perfect life? And they're like, there is no such thing. I'm like, yeah, it's in your head. You have to have that perfect life built into your head, and then you do your best to manifest it. We all know it will never be perfect, but that doesn't mean you don't have that target out there just to try, just to see if you can hit it. You may just do something crazy and hit the target, right?
It's funny, but so many, I do the same thing. So we're both business consultants, but
Very much.
the same thing. And when you talk to somebody and you ask them like, oh, where do you see yourself? Like they have this like one kind of line type thing that doesn't really answer the question. And like, surprisingly, nobody has sat around and thought about this. It's really weird. So I do the same thing. Like at the beginning, I try to get them to go through those steps so that they really, can see it and can quantify it. How much is it going to take to fund that lifestyle and whatever you want to do up until then and all of that. So it's so important. But I think so many people just never really think of, where they want to be, which is
And you and I have had this conversation before, so I'm just going to bring it in because I love this part of our conversation. And that is, what are you doing in 2027? And you and I both have our vision boards. We both have targets set for ourselves. Some people say goals, but to me, that's a little too binary. If you set a goal, you either get the ball in or you don't. But if it's a target, you get points for getting close to the bullseye. So I enjoy that aspect of it. It's like horseshoes and darts, right? Those are the two.
Exactly.
Right. Exactly. You get points if you get close, right? So I kind of go with that instead. But anyway, whether you say targets, goals, I don't care. But I know that in 2027, I will have written 4 more books. I will have introduced 4 new courses. I have these markers that I am aiming for right now in 2022 on what I'm going to be doing in 2027. And does it always happen? Does it always manifest perfectly? Absolutely not. Things happen, life happens, but not having the target leaves me like a ship without a rudder. I have no idea where I'm going. I don't know where I am. But if I have targets, I still may be confused. I still may be totally overwhelmed. I have no idea what I'm doing. I don't know what's happening today, but I can look at that vision board and look at those targets and go, but in 2027, that's where I'm going to be. How am I going to get there right now? Not a clue.
So one of the questions I answer daily at the end of the day is, did you move a little bit closer? And it's, it doesn't have to be like that much closer. It can be, one interview. It can be one connection. It can be one, phone call, whatever. But did you do something, to move yourself a little bit closer, 1% type thing? So tell us, Janine, about the money. Show me the money.
Money, right. Well, I think one of the things that I like to start off with is that I am not a certified financial planner. And I am not a CPA. I'm actually trained as an analytical biochemist, and I was teaching physics and mathematics in a liberal arts college when I kind of fell into money. I was working on my master's, and so I was doing a lot of TA work and stuff with the physics and science department. And I noticed that the scores of my students were going down into the tubes like 2 or 3 weeks right before the quarter ended. And I had these what we called physics fun Fridays, all with P's, physics fun
Everybody
Fridays.
thought that was fun, I'm sure.
And so everybody would come over to my house and we'd have like root beer floats and we just goof off. It was a place to hang out because the college was so small. It really didn't have like a student center or something like that. And I noticed that and I was like, they need a place where they can just like be off campus and be in a safe zone and yet at the same time just goof off. And so that's what I had. I had physics fun on Fridays. And so they'd come over to my house and my kids were really little. And so they had like all these brothers and sisters every Friday. It was great. And, but one of the things I started learning from them was that they were running out of money. And because they didn't have training on how to handle their scholarships or how to, set up a budget or anything, the reason their grades were going down was because they were living on ramen and Dinty Moore stew. Now, nothing against Dinty Moore stew, but it's just like they need a little something else, right? And so when I heard that, like, seriously, ramen, Kraft mac and cheese, anything that they could find and get for $1 and buy 10 of. That's how these kids were living.
And you're saying like the nutrition,
right? I'm seeing the nutrition
with their brain power.
Correctly. And I had a kid, honestly, I had 2 students that came to me and their gums were bleeding. And I said, when was the last time you had an orange? The kids had scurvy. Okay. So these were the kind of situations that I was set up with. And I was like, I went out, I bought a 5-pound bag of oranges and those 2 kids, now true, they were 19-year-old young men, so they can eat a lot, but they were so deprived of vitamin C that the 2 of them ate those 5-pound bags. Now it took them several hours and we were talking and everything, but every once in a while you'd see them eating the next orange. They were that deprived and they soon got better. So when I saw that these kids were going through this kind of situation, that's when I turned to my mentor and I said, I've got to write about money. And I said, these kids don't know how to go about handling things. And that's where the 60-40 was born. It actually was my master's thesis, because back in the day, Stephen Covey had just kind of written the book, 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. And, that was the first book. And he had actually reached out to my mentor. And that's when he wrote The 8th Habit, was after he had talked with my mentor. And so that's kind of the era that we were in. We were right at the turn of 2000. And so by 2005, I had done a lot of data collecting and all that. And so I came up with the 60-40 principle. And my students were asking for my master's thesis. Can you imagine? Nobody wants to read anybody's master's thesis. Are you kidding me? But this kind of tells you the time frame. I was running to Kinko's and it would cost me $15 every time to photocopy it. So I was charging people $18 for my master's thesis.
Good for you.
So in 2005, there was this little company called Lulu.com, and everybody was like, oh, don't go with them. They're a vanity publishing. Remember? It was bad. It was bad. You were a vanity publisher. You're not qualified enough to be an author. You're not real. Well, there wasn't a publisher on this planet that was going to touch me at that stage of life. I was a college professor teaching physics and I was writing about a money book. I didn't have an email list. I didn't have readers. I didn't have, they talked about an author platform. I had no idea what they were talking about. I teach physics and math. I don't teach money, right? So this was whole new effort for me. So I started teaching how you can go about paying down your student debt, how you can save money at the same time, and you do it on your current income. Now, this system will not work if you don't have an income. I'm making the assumption. No, seriously, I've had those questions, right? So seriously, it's like you must have an income for this to work. You need to have money coming in. I don't care if it's a newspaper route. I have taught this system to 11-year-olds who got allowances and it worked for them. So I just wanted to let you know, just as long as you have some money coming in, and I've taught it to people who only get paid 3 months out of the year. They work like crazy people for 3 months out of the year because their work is seasonal. It's during the summer or what have you, and they're working crazy hours. But the system works for them, even though they only get paid 3 months out of the year and they live on that for 9 months, right? So there's all kinds of people that have been able to use this system. So Shall I run through it?
Yeah, what is it? I'm
Okay.
done. I'm like 60-40. What is it?
Let's go, people.
I'm at the seat of
All
my
right.
chair.
So, typical college professor, get your pens and paper out, and we have images that will go up in the comment sections. Erica has all these images that I've given, so you'll start seeing it float around. Or you're welcome to reach out to Erica or myself, and we'll send the images too. But you want to put a 5-pointed star on your paper, and at the top of that 5-pointed star, you want to put 60%. And then on the other 4 arms of that star, you want to put 10%. And what we're going to do is I'm going to label each one of those, and don't panic. I am going to talk about each one of those, but the way certain people's brains work, they need the labels down, and then they can focus on what I'm talking about it. Because if I don't do that, then I have certain personality types in my classes that sit there with pen hovered and they start getting nervous because I haven't hit item number 3 and they're not listening to item number 2. Can you tell I've taught for a few years?
Exactly.
So here you go. Here are the other 4. So you have at the very top 60%, and that is living. Okay, those are your living expenses. 10% short-term savings. Second arm is going to be long-term savings. The 4th arm is going to be spiritual. And the 5th arm at 10% is going to be philanthropy. PHILANTHROPY. Because that seems to be the one word that hangs everybody up. And then they can't hear me if I don't spell it out for them. Okay. I've taught this a few times. I've taught this a few times. Now, so what is all this that I'm doing? What we're doing is we are tying into the law of attraction, which, people heard about the law of attraction through this little known book called The Secret. I gave up talking about money after The Secret came out because I was like, oh, that's law of attraction. That's what I teach. They say it so much better. The Jerry and Esther Hicks people and Wayne Dyer, and they were all of those people were busting out on the scene. And I was like, oh, they don't need my stuff. Well, I have my students coming back going, Janine, can you teach my kids? So I find myself like almost a grandma now, and I'm teaching the kids of kids. And I've had a few great kids, great grandkids. It's funny, that I've been in teaching that long. So the 60-40 principle is tying into the law of attraction, and this is how it works. You do not use your current paycheck for this. The only time you will implement the 60-40 principle, and you'll forgive me, I'm going to repeat this a lot because I still get emails saying, wait, do I use my income? And the answer is no. No, you already have your income maxed out. What you currently have, you already are maxed out. Okay. So what we're going to make the assumption on is money is going to come to you from an unknown source or an unexpected source. And I'm going to teach you how that happens. All right. I'm going to share with you how we do that before we finish here. So when you're doing this, you're setting up a living expenses, you're setting up saving your money, and you're setting up giving your money away. And that's that law of attraction. I don't know about you, but if you ever need to prime a pump, what do you have to have? You have to have somebody sitting there working the pump, but you have to have somebody else pouring the water in. So you have to have money to prime the pump. And that's where that giving side, the philanthropy and the spiritual. So, okay. So I got this 5-pointed star. Yeah, Janine, whatever. What's it all about? Well, the goal is that at some point, and not today, not tomorrow, it may take you 3 years. The longest it's ever taken a client of mine has been 7 years. He was making $225,000 a year, but he had $148,000 of debt on credit cards. He had a car payment. He had two car payments. He had a house payment, and he had student loans. So this guy was in debt. So he was the one that he made super amounts of high money, but he was also in debt up to his eyeballs. So that's why when somebody says to me, oh, I make a lot of money, I'm sitting there going, not impressed.
How much do you spend?
How much are you in debt? Because I'm looking at the trappings of your wealth. But until I see your financial sheet, I'm not buying, right? So one of the other things, and I'm sorry, this is an aside, and I will get back to the 60-40 rule, but while I lived in California during a period of time, what was funny is, all those millionaire homes that they would show you and everything. I found it interesting that they would go out and they'd show you all these amazing homes, and then they'd be up for sale in the real estate magazines of the area right after it aired. So I realized the lifestyles of the rich and famous and all these beautiful homes that you see, basically those shows are being run because they're getting ready to sell them. And so they're getting promotion for that. I was like, well, that's clever. So I
Very.
no longer look at lifestyles of the rich and famous and all that kind of stuff. I don't even care about that because a lot of them are unloading their debt. So you get an inside look to this. Okay, back to your star, back to the 60/40. What is this all about? Well, what it is the 10% of short term savings. So you're going to get money that comes to you and you're going to multiply it by 60%. And that 60% is then going to go into your checking account. So you can pay down your debt a little bit more, whatever you're doing. 10% goes into a short-term savings account. That's your savings account at your bank, right? You know, that one that you keep open at $25 just because that's all, that's all required of you to keep it in and probably hasn't moved an inch since you opened your checking account. Okay, that one. That's the one where the savings goes, okay? And you're going to start chucking money in there because, and I have talked to so many financial people, you cannot pay down your debt unless you are saving money at the same time. Now, this does not make logical sense. I have had toe-to-toe discussions with people who totally told me that I was off my rocker and I was wrong. And I looked at them and said, you will never get out of debt if you are not learning how to save money at the same time. You must do it both at the same time. The 60/40 principle makes that happen for you.
That's
okay.
Genius.
So you have to do that. So 10% goes into your short-term savings account, 10% goes into your long-term savings account, and that is for people that have a 401k or other savings plans. It depends on what country you're in, but there are retirement vehicles for you to put money in. And so you want to put money into that IRA, 401k, whatever, Keogh account. There's so many different ones. And like I said, I'm not a financial coach or a financial planner. I'm a financial coach. So you'll have to go talk to like real professionals on which savings vehicle is appropriate for your industry, because teachers have their own, there are union workers that have their own. I mean, there's so many different ways for you to use that long-term savings. All right. 10% is spiritual. Now, when I was first teaching this, I was at a Christian school. And so 10% tithing was required of the students. Now, maybe you don't have a religious organization that you're affiliated with. So I put in spiritual. It's like, if you had all the money in the world, who would you help? Right? If you had all the money. And some people are like, I really want to help with food. I want to help with white slavery. It just depends, right? Everybody, I want to make sure inner city kids have band instruments. We all have our passion. So the spiritual one is, who's doing spiritual work that you think is awesome, that maybe isn't a religious organization or a state-run organization, but you just love them for what they do. You give your 10% to them. Then the other 10% goes to a charity, a 501c3, which is the American tax code. You give that away. So basically, people are like, oh my gosh, Janine, only 60% am I keeping and 20% is going into savings and I'm giving away 20%. And I went, yes. And that's the magic of the 60/40 rule. Now, I know right now, anyone who's listening, you can't live on just 60% of your income, right? So this is not your income, right? We said that before. This is not your income. You are doing the 60/40 rule with any money that comes to you that was not expected. Now, I taught this to a 13-year-old kid who was running his own newspaper business, and he was making wooden puzzles out of scrap material, wood, that his family had at their mill. And so he one day was doing the 60/40 principle. And he said, how do I get started, Mrs. Bolon? And I said, this is how you get started. You take your piggy bank, and this is where I call it my break your bank episode. You actually take the piggy bank, and pretty much everybody I've ever talked to has a jar of coins hanging out somewhere in their house, their car, their office. You know who you are, and you know where your thing is, right? We all have that place, all right? So you're going to take that jar of cash that you're maybe using as your travel fund or whatever. Just grab that little jar. You're going to divide it all up, and you're going to divide those coins into 60/40. And you're going to take your $1.28 and put it in your short-term savings account. You're going to take your $1.28 and put it in your long-term savings account. You see where I'm going with that? So this kid Yeah, this kid was great. He had $5.28 in his sock drawer. And so I was having to kind of run him through the math because he wasn't real top notch with his algebra. But that's okay. We got it. We got him taken care of, right? Because he was like, what's 60% on a calculator? I can't find the percentage. I'm like, dude, it's 0.6. Okay. So, but that's okay, because
needs to be
everybody needs
children.
Yeah, everybody needs a little help. All right. And I'm like, and I don't want you to get stuck on something that simple. Right. So I always, even when I'm teaching adults, I'll always say, okay, so you take your 60%, multiply it by the money that you have. So that would be on a calculator, 0.6. And you'll see some people writing it down. And it's just some folks, come on, you haven't done math since you graduated high school because you abhor it. I don't blame you. Right. So that's how we help you out. Okay. So what are you doing? You're breaking the bank. You're splitting all this money up. You're sending it in the different directions. And basically you're ringing a bell. You're like ringing a bell to the universe, clang, clang, clang. And you're saying, I am now going to be responsible with money that comes to me. And the past doesn't matter because what's important is right now. And right now, I have more education than I did before I heard this crazy woman, Janine, start speaking about the 60-40 principle. And so now, today, I'm going to do this. And the universe says, I see you're going to do the 60-40. Fascinating. Okay. So you split your money up and you divide it up the way you were supposed to, and you send it in the directions that you send it. And I tell everybody, in 72 hours, you are going to receive money from an unexpected source, and you do it again. You do the 60-40 again. And then more money will come from you from an unexpected source, and it will happen again. And people say, but I only make money from my income. I don't get any extra money. I'm like, were you living in 2020? The federal government was handing out checks. Okay. Who would have ever thought in our lifetime we would see our government hand us a check? Are you kidding me? Right. So you always have money coming into your world. The thing is you don't have a system to handle it. So it kind of went past your radar. You didn't really pay attention to it. Right? Rebates, birthdays, all kinds of things. So what you're doing is you're ringing that bell, right? You're ringing that bell with the universe saying, I'm now going to be responsible with money. Well, we know how powerful money is. It's right there with sex, right? I mean, those are the two biggest, most powerful things you've got going on. We see, and you see how well we handle sex. So the money thing. So I always like to tell people, so when it comes to the money thing, you get a little check, and then you get more, and then you get more. And when the universe sees that you are handling your finances in a whole different way and you're using the 60-40 principle, I have had people tell me they had huge checks in the mail. So back to my 13-year-old, because this is a funny story. My 13-year-old, he does the 60-40 with his $5 and change, from a sock drawer.
So cute.
And the next day, because I told him 72 hours, and he's like, how many days is that? So we figured it out. It was another, what we call
multiplication
lesson. It was another teaching moment, right? It was another teaching moment for the sweet kid. So I told him what 72 hours was. And then after we got all done with that, he's helping his mom load I think he had twins, his younger sisters were twins, and he's helping mom load the twins into their car seats and everything. And they're in this parking lot, and all of a sudden he sees this $20 bill rolling across the parking lot, and he yells, he puts his hands out, he goes, nobody move. And his mother's like, oh my God, right? He's like, that $20 is mine. And he takes off across the parking lot and grabs it. This is mine. Janine Bolon told me this was mine. And so he gets on the call with me, tells me the story, and says, all right, I need a little bit more help. Tell me about the 60-40 again. Because he didn't believe me at work. He didn't take notes.
And he quadrupled his income.
And so you're like, oh, that's cute. That's a 13-year-old kid. I have had people, even before 2020, because I've been teaching this since 2005, people. But I've had clients that they would have $1,200 rebate checks come to them from their insurance companies. Okay. $1,200. I mean, I've had people gasping and crying like they couldn't believe it. They had money coming in. They never knew something like this could ever happen, blah, blah, blah. So I know that it will help you as well. So what are you telling the universe? I'd like to break down the 60-40 principle for you one more time and say, this is what you're saying to the universe as you divide the money up. So you're saying, okay, any new money that comes to me that's not my paycheck, 60% I'm going to put in my checking account to pay down my debt. and that takes care of the past. Now, maybe you don't have debt. I have several clients that don't. It doesn't matter. You can go spend it on whatever you want, but most people have some sort of debt, so they use it to pay down their debt. The 10% that's the short-term savings this is for all those unexpected expenses we have every month that I've usually just stressed about. Now I have a short-term savings account that I can pull from when my hot water heater bursts and decides to wash my floor after the new linoleum has been put in. Yes, that happened to me. So, and it's funny how those emergencies that happen are always at the same level as my savings account. I've noticed.
Oh, God.
It's like I don't have to go into debt, but it's like I do have to pull the money from that short-term savings. Okay. And eventually you'll get ahead of the game. Then the 10% that goes into long-term savings, what you're saying to the universe there is there's going to come a time where I don't want to work anymore, or maybe I won't be able to work. It's going to be after I'm 65. And so I am putting money aside for that time. So I am not a burden to my tribe. I am not a burden to my family. And as I like to tell people, I don't want my children picking my retirement home. I want to have
got past, present, and future. And you're I'm planning it.
I'm planning it, right? And so that's what the long-term savings. Now, the spiritual side, why do we give 10% away as tithing or spiritually? That's because we have a soul that is living in a body that drinks the water of earth, eats the food of earth, that digs in the dirt, drives cars around. It's basically you're paying rent for your soul to have this beautiful little avatar, three-dimensional avatar that's running around this earth. And so that's why, and I wanted to explain this not only to my religious people, but also others, is that's why people who tithe are always able to just squeak by. If you've ever noticed people who tithe significantly all the time, they're able to just squeak by. Well, I don't want you to squeak by. I want you to thrive. Okay. I don't want you to survive. I want you to thrive. And I know there's a lot of people out there that are saying that. And I'm like, I'm so glad there are other teachers running around saying that, because we are supposed to thrive. And so I want you to be able to thrive as well. And by paying that 10% to whatever spiritual organization that brings you joy, you are basically taking care of rent for your soul and your body. Okay. 10% philanthropy. That 10% that you're giving away to philanthropy, some people say charity. There is a slight difference. And the reason I say philanthropy is that's you priming the pump, right? You've got to pour water into that pump to get more water to come out. In this way, it's money. You put a little money in, and what you're doing, what you're saying to the universe is that you realize there are people out there that have it even tougher than you do. And so you're going to give to them because you know you're a little bit further ahead of the game than they are. And it needs to be something that you're really passionate about. So if you're one of those, one of my students, he was 16, there was this organization that made toys, wooden toys and they'd send them to children all over the world during an emergency, like floods or hurricanes or tornadoes or something like that. They noticed that kids didn't get toys to play with. So they would take these wooden toys and they'd ship them all over. And so my son and this other student absolutely loved that idea. So they were giving to that organization, that nonprofit organization all the time.
So cool.
They were passionate about it. They spent time there, they volunteered there, and they donated money. Okay. So sometimes when you get better and better at dealing with your money, you realize money becomes abundant, but your time becomes deficient. And so I want to start training you now to realize that your time is very important. And so you want to start managing it very well. But at the same time, you want to start managing your money well, because those are the two areas that help define what our perfect life is how you manage your time and how you manage your money. And so when you start getting really good at those two, then you can really start playing some awesome games on, okay, I guess it's time for me to start taking my helicopter lessons. I've always wanted to fly in a helicopter, so now I can afford it, right? And I won't put myself in debt. So that was what one of my students mentioned.
That's a fun one. I have a quick question. So let's say you are an adult and you want to do this, and can it be like a side hustle type side job? If you're a high school kid, like, could it be, they don't necessarily need income. I don't know if you would call their side jobs income, but whatever. Could it be your second job, your second income? If you're an adult, I guess is when you would have a second one.
Yes. And that's what I say is, as long as I've always had 2 jobs and the entire time. And I would always use the second job to fund my hobbies, as well as I used it to stuff money in my IRA and stuff like that. So I totally say yes on
So
that.
if you're out of debt, that first 60% of your second job can be towards your hobbies.
Whatever you want.
And then the rest will go.
And then the rest will go as far as the 60-40. And what's interesting is how it affects your primary job. I've had people that said, no money came to me in my 72 hours. And I went, oh, really? Well, what happened? And they went, my husband got promoted and he got a bonus. Or I got promoted and I'm now making 25,000 more than I ever thought I would ever. Things like that happen to my people. And so I'm not saying that's going to be what you experience, because there is a mindset shift that is happening. Instead of you always looking at the bills and going, I don't have enough money, I don't have enough money, you're now looking at your bills and you're saying, okay, I don't know where the money is coming, but I know money is coming. And you start looking for new ways either to make more money or to where you're going to put your money. One of the things I recommend to people is start looking now for your philanthropic organization, because you want to make sure that you can do that for them. I always wanted to make millions so I could help millions, is what I tell people. And I'm a big, big philanthropist. I love giving money away. And I always have people give some to me. I'm like, are you doing the 60-40? Do you have a 501c3 that I would be interested in? Right. So those are some of the fun things that you can do with your cash. But yes, if you have a side business, that is fine.
I think that would be a great use. I mean, obviously, first and foremost would be to pay off that debt, but everybody needs some hobbies too. So a little bit of fun money with that 60% is a great idea. And I think having a direction and a focus, no matter what stage of life you're in, no matter what age you are, is so important. And starting that, so what's the youngest person you've taught it to?
10. I called him my next Bill Gates. He was a 10-year he was a 10-year-old and he had 3 businesses, and each business fed into the other. And by the time he was 13, he was putting money in his IRA.
Oh my God. What were his businesses?
Remember the kid I told you that had the newspaper and had the wooden puzzles? He dropped the newspaper route because he just didn't have time to run that and go to school and run his 3 businesses. So he dropped the newspaper route. He made wooden puzzles, but he had chickens that he would either slaughter for the meat or he would have eggs. All right. And then those chickens, and then he would take the feathers, and he was helping clean out feathers, and he would sell the feathers to people who were in the craft arena. Right. And because his family had a mill, he would take all the scrap wood that they could not use, sand it down, take care of it, and he would make these wooden puzzles. So that kid was awesome. A little entrepreneur from the day one. And so, yeah, he was my youngest. Now, I'd like to talk about my oldest client. She was 87 years of age. Awesome. And she hired me to call her once every 3 months to make sure that she was donating to her IRA. That's the only reason I called her. And she got to a point where she's like, just leave a message on my answering machine, dearie. And so I did that for like 2 years. For 2 years, all I did was call her every 3 months and make sure she was putting money in her IRA.
Oh my gosh. At 87, she was putting money in her IRA. Did you tell her to start spending it?
Well, the thing is, those habits, see, this is the thing. When people think that money will corrupt them, I look at them and go, not a chance. Right. And they're like, what? And I'm like, if you're using the 60-40 rule and that principle, and that's how you get the money you do have, you're not going to change overnight. You're still going to be a philanthropist. You're still going to be looking for ways that you can serve a community. You're still going to be looking for ways that you can make more money so that you can serve more people. I'm like, your whole heart is there. You're not going to be anything else. No, you're not going to be corrupt, right? Because of the way that you have come by this financial reward. And so sometimes when I look at very wealthy people, and I'm lucky enough to catch a YouTube video or something like that where they were being interviewed by somebody who wasn't being a jerk to them, right? And they actually start talking about how they came up with their money or what have you. These self-made people, there's a wonderful podcast by How I Built It is the name of the podcast, right? And He only interviews people that have $100 million corporations. And if you look at the way these guys and these women have built these huge corporations or these big businesses, you'll see that there was a problem. They wanted to serve that problem. They wanted to take care of people. And what's funny is, yeah, they wanted to make money, but money wasn't the primary reason that they got into the business. It was one of the things that had to happen. So, like I say to people who are authors or creatives, I'm like, why do we write books, and why do I want you to be profitable in the way that you sell your information? Because I want you to be able to afford to make the next book. I want you to be able to make the next piece of jewelry, the next piece of art. You got to learn how to sell your art so that you can keep making art, if for no other reason, just so you can start making money.
And one of the things that they don't really, I guess, think about, that they should remind themselves is, if you're not making money, you won't be able to do it. And then all the people that you are helping by doing whatever it is that you're doing will not be able to be helped either. Mm-hmm. And so by looking at it like that, that does sometimes make people feel better about making money. But I guess I didn't grow up like that. And so it's sort of weird to me that people do have that kind of thought process when it comes to money. But, it's like flip the script kind of thing. You need to make the money to be able to, you employ more people, or you help more people, or, you're able to donate more. If you have $5 and you're doing the 60-40 rule, you're donating, 20% of that $5, which is what, $1, to a philanthropy and to spiritual. But if you're making $500,000, and you're still donating that, you're just donating that much more money and that much more that you can, give to people or help people, or just be a good person, I guess, and do, what you think is right and what makes you feel good.
Well, I did have a business owner come to me. He was 58 years of age, and he came to me and said, Janine, I'm doing the 60-40 rule, and I still have extra money. He was a single man, and he had never been married, had no interest in ever getting married. He was what we call a total and complete geek. He was one of those programmers, and his happy place was sitting on computers and just working them. Okay, so this is about
why did he have extra money if he was doing 60-40? That adds up to 100. Or was it extra money out of his salary?
He was making more money than he could possibly use.
And then my next question. Okay, good.
He had used every tax vehicle advantage he could that was legal. And he's like, I have all this extra money. What do I do? And I said, well, it's time for you to start teaching. I said, either start a 501c3 or some other thing, but you need to become a mentor on something, because he didn't have any hobbies. He was a total workaholic. Like, he loved his job. He was one of those few people that believe it or not, people do exist, but the news
I have a
media,
friend like that. I'm like, that's exactly what he needs to do. Yes.
Right. And I said, you guys, the media will never put a camera on you, because number one, you're too freaking happy. How annoying is that? You're happy at your job. You love what you do. You're getting paid obscene quantities of cash for what you do. Oh my God, let me just hate you now. Right. But I was like, that's wonderful. So when you get to that point, and it does happen, people, trust me, it's a mindset shift. It's when you really start taking control of your life that these sorts of things happen. And he finally looked at me and said, yeah, I guess I do need to start a nonprofit. I don't know how to do that. I'm like, well, here's a list of people that I know that can walk you through the process. And so now he ended up not creating his own. He ended up supporting a group that was already in place. And then they became nationally known because of the work he did in the background as a programmer.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah. So he was able to donate, and yet at the same time gave his skills and was able to teach others about it. So that is, I know people are like, oh, so sad, wish I had those type of problems, but they're shifts in mindset. And it is something that you want to have in your head, which is, we're going to turn it right back around to what Erica was talking about earlier, which is why Erica and I have vision boards that talk about what we're doing in 2027, so that when these beautiful things do happen to us, we know exactly where we're putting the money and we know where we're going with it.
I love this conversation. I knew this was going to be a fun one. It's funny because that was going to be my next question. What if, and that there are a lot of people that are in that position, they have all their expenses covered. They have, all of their avenues done, and then there's still leftover money. And even though it's their, income, what can they do with it? And can they do that 60-40 rule? So yeah, I think that's pretty cool. And then finding ways that align with who you are and what you're about. Like you said, teach, mentor, do something like that. And I know there are a lot of people that are like, oh, I'm not a teacher, but everybody is a teacher in some way, shape, or form. Everybody can be, or is, mentor in some way.
Well, like as an example, because this is kind of off the beaten track, I had a client who was very big in the pharmaceutical industry and made a lot of money. And he's like, I don't know what to teach me. I don't do anything. I went, Stephen, you are so full of it. You're a timpani player. He's a timpani player in a symphony off on the side. And I'm like, go teach some of these kids how to freaking drum. All right. Or just walk in with your kettle sets and just start goofing off with them. He goes, I get nervous around people. I don't know what to say. I'm like, you don't have to say jack. Take your sticks and go play, if nothing else.
Right.
So he started a drumming circle of all things in the local park.
So see, that's so
yeah.
cool.
And so I'm like, all those objections that you have, like, I don't know what to say to people. And I get this and I get that. Stop thinking about what terrifies you about it and start thinking about what you could do to avoid that. So I got into podcasting because I didn't like video at the time. This is back in 2005.
And you're so good at it.
Well, thank you. Very kind. But I just, that's why I got into audio blogging. That's what podcasters were called because we were part of Blog Talk Radio, which was one of the very first software programs on the scene back in 2005, 2006 for that. And so now we're called podcasters, and everybody and their monkey's uncle seems to have
a podcast.
have a podcast. And I love it. I love it because you're finally getting to hear a lot of people that you would never see on broadcast media.
I agree. I love podcasts. I'm so addicted. I think that's, one of the other things is education. That, if you could spend some of that, where would you do that if you wanted to continue educating? Could you do that in your 60-40? Would that be out of your living?
I don't know what you're saying. Help me follow you a bit
if you wanted to spend some money on like continuing your education and some, like study something or buy books or get a certificate, would you take that out of your living 60?
Yes, you take it out of your 60%. And that's one of those things that I always encourage people not to go into debt if they can at all avoid it. And look into scholarships, look into all the free money out there. And if you can't find anything like that, then 2020 has taught us that there are people out there that I used to see that would sell programs for $2,500 and they were teaching for free and they're on YouTube now. So, it's like, definitely start seeking out. We have so much stuff that's available for free. And then if you want to go to the next level because you've done as much of the free stuff as you can and you're being plateaued, you're at a plateau, that's when I recommend that you start asking people around, hey, who's the best at throwing pots? Who's the best at trick riding a bicycle? I want to learn parkour. Who's the best around here at that? Find out who's best at it and then ask to be an apprentice and then see what they say.
Absolutely. There are ways around all of this. I know you have a hard stop coming up. So thank you so much for joining me and the audience. We absolutely loved it. Janine, tell us a little bit about how people can get in touch with you. If you're, we'll put your links below, but what kind of links would you like? I know LinkedIn. Where else would you?
Actually, LinkedIn is the best. If you connect with me on LinkedIn, my team will pick you up. And then if you want to get on a call with me, like a 15-minute call, that's fine. Or if you want to be directed to one of my websites, a lot of my websites are de-indexed by Google. We got put in a penalty box. We got attacked by a bot. And so many of my websites that were up and free and had a lot of free stuff. So definitely reach out to my team and say, hey, financialfirstresponse.com. That's where a lot of my free stuff is for you.
Do you want to mention any of the other very cool things that you do that are a little bit different than this?
I have 12, I'm working on book number 12, and I have 4 different genres that I work in. And so the best way to find out about all those different genres to go to the8gates.com. So it's and then the number 8 gates.com. That's the mother company, and it will fill you in on all the rest.
Awesome. All right, Janine, thank you so much. Have an amazing day. And I appreciate you taking the time to come on here with us. And I will hope to see you soon.
All right. Bye, everybody. Good luck.